I have a feeling that a lot of NASCAR fans may not like the sport keep getting slower and slower and slower due to safety. I have that feeling. But at the end of the day, fans are there for entertainment. So if the sport keeps getting slower and slower, won't it get boring? I know safety is most important, but at the end of the day, money has to be made. And if fans are not enjoying the sport, that could be a problem. The crash that changed NASCAR forever. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Guys, this was a video suggestion for me to check out how things may have changed in NASCAR from a couple of years ago and now. So without much further ado, let's get right into it.
NASCAR superspeedway racing in the late 80s was much different than it is today. A lot different. The racing itself is polar opposite, with pack racing being the standard of today's racing and a much more strung out single file racing back in the day. It wasn't a boring single file, but due to the high speeds, the cars naturally separated much more. Which leads me to the biggest difference, the speeds. The pole for the 2022 Daytona 500 was set by Kyle Larson at a speed of 180 miles per hour. Pretty fast, right? Well, NASCAR fans would agree that it's not quite what it used to be, and they would be right. The 1987 NASCAR season just so happened to be the fastest season in NASCAR's history, with a Daytona 500 pole speed of 210.3 miles per hour, set by Bill Elliott, nearly 30 miles per hour faster than this year's speed. So what happened? Why is NASCAR getting slower? Technology isn't getting worse, and the drivers certainly aren't either.
That's actually very surprising. Like, it's supposed to be faster, right? With better technology and all that stuff. So it's actually very surprising.
At the single moment that changed the direction of NASCAR completely, from a how fast can you go daredevilish sport to a sport obsessed with safety.
Wow.
Our story begins in February of 1987 in preparation for the Daytona 500. The drivers knew speeds were going to be high, but they didn't know.
This guy's voice sounded so depressing. Did something bad, something horrible happen? I mean, it's almost sounding like he's giving some kind of a serial killer documentary or something. Man, this sounds really scary.
Exactly how high. Bill Elliott, who at the time held the current Daytona 500 pole record of 205 miles per hour, said that he wouldn't expect a car to hit 210 in race conditions. You could imagine his surprise whenever he averaged 210 miles per hour on his opening qualifying lap. I'm just glad it's over. I got squirrely in the third and fourth turns. No way I was going to take a second lap. Enough's enough. It was one of those deals where the foot is telling your brain, this is crazy. It wasn't only Elliott who had speed though. In fact, every driver who qualified in the top 10 would have broken Bill's previous record of just over 205 miles per hour. Bobby Allison, in only his 9th ever start, secured a spot on the front row with a lap average of over 209 miles per hour, besting his father by 2 spots.
Well, it's actually very interesting. I'm just thinking about it and it just crossed my mind, guys. This motorsports, I think it would be unfair for people to have records, right? Like in terms of miles per hour and all that. Since it's not fully your body that you are using for performance, you are using a vehicle. So let me say in the 1980s, like outside of what may have happened, I'm talking about like in terms of normal logic. In the 1980s, the vehicles that were available at that point in time is not even comparable to what is available now. So if that was the case, if that is the case, automatically the record, like people will be breaking, like as time goes on, people will be breaking records. People will be breaking the older records because of the advance in technology in terms of the vehicle. So it's not like all these other sports that it's your human body that you're using to do all these things or break all these records. Though I know medical science may also contribute for someone like LeBron, for example, who may have had the luxury of having better medical science to give him the ability to play longer than most people may have been able to. But that is either in or there, because a lot of people in LeBron's era that are also getting injured as well. So or doing load management. So like back to this thing, like having records in this kind of sports is kind of weird. What do you guys think? Motorsports fans watching this video, what do you guys think? Like, isn't it kind of unfair if someone breaks someone's record by the virtue of having a more advanced vehicle? That's just what I'm thinking out loud.
Bill Elliott would go on to smoke the competition and lead over half the race. The biggest relief was felt after the race, though, whenever no one had a major accident in the Cup race. At these speeds, any accident had the potential to be very serious.
Wow.
After all, Daytona was the most dangerous track in NASCAR. At the time, 8 drivers had been killed at Daytona in the track's history,
Wow.
with the Goodies Dash Series driver Joe Young sadly passing away the weekend of the '87 Daytona 500. Now that the drivers had survived Daytona, it was on to Talladega in the 9th race of the season. Talladega was arguably the next most dangerous track, but had only 2 fatal wrecks in the track's entire history. Despite the faster speeds of
Man,
Talladega,
this is scary. 2 fatal wrecks. That is 2 people died. And the other track had 8 people died. Wow. Wow. That means the sport is not dangerous at all now. I don't think people die this much in this sport now. I don't think so. Well, that must have been brutal in the
just something
80s.
about the nature of the track at Daytona made it much more dangerous for drivers. The weekend of the 1987 Winston 500 at Talladega began very similar to the Daytona 500 week. Bill Elliott broke his old track record and set a new record on a single lap of qualifying. His speed, only the fastest lap in NASCAR history, 212.8 miles per hour. This gave Elliott his 5th consecutive pole at Talladega. Bobby Allison, who had been Elliott's biggest competition all week, only managed 3rd after blowing his qualifying engine in practice earlier that day. His dad, Bobby Allison, managed to stick it on the front row, but was still 1 mile per hour slower than Elliott's time. The race started pretty much as expected. Bill Elliott dominated the opening stint of the race, but that was until Bobby got by Bill Elliott on lap 19. Just a few short laps later, this would happen.
Oh, we have a problem. Bobby Allison with a horrible crash here on the front stretch. It has torn out a complete section of protective railing separating, and Alan Kowicki becomes involved.
Debris and is collecting other cars. There was a lot of...
While running in 5th place, Bobby Allison's engine blew and resulted in him spinning, getting airborne, and flying into the catch fence. Some debris from the engine cut down his tires. Nearly 100 feet of fence was torn down in the process, and 9 other cars were involved in a crash, starting because of drivers trying to avoid Allison. Luckily, Bobby was uninjured in the crash and walked out under his own power. After safety crews arrived at Allison's car, Allison recalled, "They put me in the safety vehicle and headed around the racetrack the long way to get back to the infield hospital. I said, yeah, they're taking me this way so I don't have to see all the dead bodies laying there." Luckily, the damage wasn't as bad as first thought, but 5 fans were still injured to the point where they required treatment. 3 were treated at the infield care center, and 2 were sent to a local hospital, with one of them losing an eye from flying debris.
Whoa!
This was still devastating for those fans and their families, but by sheer luck, a true tragedy was avoided, and NASCAR knew that. In many interviews and documentaries about the wreck, many NASCAR drivers and officials admit that NASCAR was a few feet from potentially having to stop the sport altogether.
Damn!
In a replay, you can see that Allison's car struck the outside wall initially before making contact
Yeah,
with the catch
that
fence.
is true. That is true. Look at that. If you look at it, it actually hits the fence before it hits the other net. Wow. Okay. That is true. That actually softens the blow.
In a replay, you can see that Allison's car struck the outside wall
Yeah.
initially before making contact
Yeah.
with the catch fence,
Yeah.
absorbing most of the impact.
Yes.
If Allison's car was at a different angle and made contact
I
with the
went
catch
in
fence
stressed.
first, he very well may have gone through the fence into the grandstand.
Shit.
That isn't a scenario that anyone wants to hear or think about, but it was a concern NASCAR had to address then and there. By the time NASCAR showed up to Talladega for the second time in 1987, they had a temporary solution. Smaller carburetors were mandated to reduce speeds. That race, Bill Elliott's pole speed was under 204 miles per hour, more than an 8 mile per hour difference from the spring race. The next season in 1988, NASCAR mandated that a restrictor plate was to be bolted onto the engine underneath the carburetor, restricting the amount of air that could get to the engine. This would reduce speeds, but in turn create larger packs at superspeedways. It wasn't anything like pack racing today, but made big crashes more common at these tracks. But NASCAR felt that it was safer to wad up 15 cars than to send one car into the catch fence at 210 miles per hour, and I agree. When NASCAR returned to Talladega in the spring of '88, Bill Elliott's pole speed was under 199 miles per hour. The pole speed at Talladega would drop to just over 193 miles per hour in 1989, but was up to nearly 200 miles per hour again in 1990. They were then slowed down again, and you see how this is going. It's a roller coaster every year to see how fast drivers will go. It has been a topic of conversation at least once every couple years since then. What is the best balance between speed and safety? The fan base and even NASCAR's higher-ups will probably be divided forever on what is the best package or approach when it comes to plate racing. When in doubt though, I think it's always best to lean towards safety.
Yeah.
With pack racing, there have been some crashes that have injured fans, such as Jeff Bodine's 2000 crash at Daytona, Austin Dillon's 2015 crash at Daytona, and Carl Edwards' crash at Talladega, etc. But imagine how much worse things would have been if these accidents happened without a restrictor plate. Without this initiative by NASCAR, or Allison's crash in general, a much worse incident could have happened at even higher speeds considering NASCAR was only getting faster at the time. All in all, NASCAR got super lucky this day, and it brought some major safety changes. Although it didn't directly lead to roof flaps, this crash played a part in getting that development process started. Of course, the biggest direct change was the introduction of restrictor plates, which has saved countless driver and fan lives. But how did the 1987 Winston 500 end? Well, it does have a pretty happy ending after all. The race was red flagged for over 2.5 hours for repairs to the fence. Due to impending darkness, the race would have been shortened by 10 laps. Bobby was obviously shaken after the wreck and wanted to leave, but his wife insisted they stay to support Davey. Bobby Allison dominated the race and led over 100 laps. He was helped when Bill Elliott dropped out of the race with 28 to go. He battled with Dale Earnhardt at the end of the race, but ultimately Davey prevailed and won his first Cup race in only his 14th start.
Wow.
He was the first rookie to win a Cup event in 6 years. When I looked up in the mirror and saw Dad going into the fence, it was the emotional low period of my life, Davey stated after the race. It was the ultimate irony, with Bobby experiencing the worst day of his driving career and his son capturing his first win. This, along with the pair's 1-2 finish in the 1988 Daytona 500, will go down as one of the most iconic father-son moments in the sport's history.
Wow. Wow, that is really scary. I mean, thank God that when it happened that first time, the damage was not that bad. Though someone was got blind. I think one eye. That is really sad. And at least it was something. Most of the time, human beings are not proactive. We are reactive. Like most of the time, something has to happen for a change to take place. So it's understandable why something had to happen for the change to be made. But I have a feeling that a lot of NASCAR fans may not like how the sport keep getting slower and slower and slower due to safety. However, I have that feeling. At the end of the day, fans are there for entertainment. So if the sport keeps getting slower and slower, won't it get boring? I know safety is most important, but at the end of the day, money has to be made, and if fans are not enjoying the sport, that could be a problem. What do you guys think? If you're a NASCAR fan here, what do you guys think? Are the safety procedures being implemented? Is it affecting the sport? Is it making the sport boring? I would like to know what you think down in the comments. See you in the next one. Peace.